the two things that Israel asked for, they only asked for two things. They asked for the whole court case to be thrown out, and they asked for it to be taken off the general list. The court said no and no. So Israel lost right there. Everything Israel asked for, out the window. No and no. You lose. Now, let's go over what South Africa asked for. And we're going to go over what the ICJ, how they ruled. The first thing that South Africa asked for was for the state of Israel to immediately suspend its military operations in and against Gaza. Now, the ICJ did not suspend military operations in and against Gaza. That is not what they ended up doing. And that is what the beef is with all these people saying that there's no ceasefire. Now, let me make something very clear. Military operations and ceasefire and live fire military operation is not the only type of military operation that exists. Plenty of other military operations that don't include live fire. So you can have a ceasefire without halting your military operations, and you can continue your military operations without firing a single shot. So for example, flooding the tunnels, not that it's a bad thing. There's a myriad of reasons of why that's a bad thing to do, but nonetheless, you could do that without live fire. So you don't have to have a ceasefire to somehow disable the tunnel network. You don't have a ceasefire, for example, to send in a group of special ops to capture the leaders of Hamas, take them out of Gaza, and hold them accountable in trial. You can do that. That's a military operation. You're going to go in, you're going to capture the people. A military operation is to go a hostage rescue operation. That's a military operation. You could do a military operation. There's a whole host of military operations that you could do that don't include warfare, that don't include live ammunition, dropping bombs, warfare. So the ICJ did not call for a so they didn't call for an end of its military operations in Gaza. That's what they didn't call for. To say that they didn't call for a ceasefire, we're going to get into this. They did say you can't kill anybody. That would essentially be a ceasefire. So South Africa asked for an immediate suspension of its military operations in Gaza. That is something that the court did not do. They said you can continue military operations, you just can't continue a genocide, and you can't kill anybody. So the ICJ, the way they ruled, let me just get to the right page here. They took votes. We're going to actually go through the voting of how they voted one by one on provision by provision. It's actually quite interesting. There was one judge from Uganda who voted against everything. Israel didn't even vote against everything, but she did. The country of Uganda has now since pretty much disowned her. They've come out saying she doesn't represent the government. She doesn't represent our sentiments. We don't know what the hell. She went rogue. So the government of Uganda is pretty upset about it. So here's what the ICJ, this is the ruling here. By a vote of 15-2, so there were 17 judges on the panel. 2 of the judges are judges that were each country's allowed, if there is no judge on the panel from their country, they're allowed to bring in a judge. So South Africa was able to bring in a judge, and Israel was allowed to bring in a judge. So it was a 17-judge panel. By a vote of 15-2, the state of Israel, in accordance with its obligations under the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of this convention, in particular, A, killing members of the group. Nothing else. That's what it says. Killing members of the group. They didn't say except for civilians that are being used as human shields, except for the people who happen to be trapped in the tunnels as you gas them, or except for there's no except for. They said you cannot kill members of the group being Palestinians. Can't kill Palestinians. Now, I don't know how you do that without a ceasefire. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. So maybe you don't kill them, you want to maim them, shoot their eye out, shoot off a limb. Not allowed to do that either. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. And D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. So those are the things you're not allowed to do. Now, I don't know how you do those things without a ceasefire. I really don't. How do you not kill members of the group? How do you not cause serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group? I mean, if you're taking shelter and you're looking up and you're seeing hearing bombs being dropped all around you, that's mental harm. And they're saying you can't do that anymore. So you can't drop bombs. You can't kill people. You can't deliberately inflict on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So even a little bit of it. So you can't blow up all these buildings anymore. So I don't know how you do that without a ceasefire. You can have a military operation without doing any of those things. Like I said, a hostage rescue operation. You could have a extraction of those hostages, capturing of the leaders of Hamas, taking them back to Israel to hold them accountable for the October 7th crimes. You could dismantle, military infrastructure that if you can find it, such as tunnels themselves, right? There's a lot of things that you could do that are military operations that do not include killing members of the group. Effectively, a ceasefire, but you can still do other military operations. Again, South Africa didn't ask for a ceasefire. Remember, what South Africa asked for was for the state to immediately suspend its military operations. The judges refused to do that because of all the things I mentioned. Not only that, but how could the judges say no more military operations when a military operation includes trying to rescue your own hostages? Of course, Israel should be allowed to try to rescue their hostages. They're not any good at it. They've killed more than they've helped, but they should be allowed to try. Nobody should be telling them, no, you cannot do that. You should be allowed to go and capture people who committed crimes against your country and cart them off to your courts and hold them accountable. You should absolutely be allowed to do that. That's not genocide. And what the ICJ has to rule on is genocide. What South Africa is accusing Israel of is genocide. You can have war even without genocide. So how could the ICJ say you can't have war? Well, you can have a war, you just can't genocide during that war. Or you can have a military operation, you just can't kill people. So it's quite significant that the ICJ ruled you can't kill any members of the group. You can't kill anybody. I mean, that is what they said. They didn't say, go ahead and feed them before you kill them, or go ahead and kill them, but kill them slowly, or you have a month to keep killing them. They said, stop killing members of the group. Period. Rescue your hostages, capture the leaders and hold them accountable. Stop killing people. Here's some other votes by 15-2, and the two are Judge Sebutinde. I'm sorry if I'm saying that. Let me see. I practiced how to say this. Sebutinde. So it's Judge Sebutinde and Judge Barak, who's from Israel. Sebutinde is from Uganda. Voted against that by a vote of 15-2. Also, Sebutinde and Barak. They voted against. The state of Israel shall ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit any of the acts described in the point above, which is don't kill any members of the group, don't cause any bodily harm, don't inflict any terrible conditions meant to bring about destruction of their lives. Don't do any of that. Make sure your military doesn't do any of that, okay? By a vote of 16-1, the state of Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. So you need to punish the people who are calling for genocide. One person said that was, nah. And that wasn't the Israeli judge. The Israeli judge says, yeah, you know what? You should punish people calling for genocide. He said, my country should punish people calling for genocide. But it was Judge Sebutinde who said, nah, it's okay. Go ahead. The Ugandan judge, also a vote of 16-1, with the Israeli judge going with the majority and the Ugandan judge just saying, nah. The state of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Who in the hell votes against that? The Ugandan judge. Not even the Israeli judge voted against that. The Israeli judge was like, yeah, right. They should actually try to get all the humanitarian assistance in there. And she's like, go ahead, call for genocide. Don't give them any aid. Now, again, Uganda has completely, they're like distanced themselves from this judge. They're really angry. She's the first Black woman to be appointed to a judgeship on the UN ICJ. They were really proud of her. And now they're like, what in the world has happened to this judge? Maybe this judge has a real staunch bias against Muslims, against Arab people. Like, who knows? Very bizarre. Okay, 15-2. So again, it was Judge Sebutudinde from Uganda and the Israeli judge voting against this. The state of Israel shall take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of acts within the scope of Article 2 and Article 3 of the Convention in the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide against members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. So, nah, go ahead, destroy the evidence, says Judge Sebutudinde and the Israeli Judge Barak. Another by 15-2, the state of Israel shall submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to this order within 1 month as from the date of October. So in 1 month, provide a report of everything you've done to comply. And again, those two judges, Sebutinde and Barak, said, nah, we're not going to do that. We don't think that we should have to do that. We don't think Israel should have to do that. Very bizarre for this Ugandan judge to even go against the Israeli judge on two of the provisions of humanitarian aid and calls and like verbal calls for genocide from Israeli public figures and politicians. Very, very bizarre. And, I mean, it's not laughing matter because this is a serious thing, and this Uganda. I mean, but it is bizarre. I mean, it's just ultra bizarre. So these are pretty much all the things that South Africa asked for. When you look at the things South Africa asked for, they said that they wanted the state of Israel to immediately suspend its military operations. That was not granted. Again, military operations are different than live fire. They asked for the state of Israel shall ensure that any military or irregular armed units also don't do any military operations. And the judges did not give them that. They said that they wanted the Palestinian people, they wanted Israel to take all measures to prevent genocide. The judges did agree to that. South Africa says they need to stop killing members of the group. They need to stop causing serious bodily harm, inflicting conditions on the group to bring about its physical destruction in whole and part. Also, measures intended to prevent births. That was all granted. The judges agreed. They gave those exactly. South Africa also asked for the state of Israel to desist from expelling people from their homes. They need to make sure that they have access to adequate food and water, access to humanitarian assistance, access to fuel, shelter. All of that was granted by the ICJ judges. They also said that they need to be punishing the people who engage in direct and public incitement to commit genocide or conspiracy to commit genocide. The judges granted this. The state of Israel shall take effective measures to prevent the destruction and the preservation of evidence related to the allegations. The judges granted that. They also said that they need to report to the court the measures taken, and the judges granted that. So the judges granted everything the South Africans asked for. And remember, the judges did not give Israel the two things it asked for. It gave the South Africans everything it asked for except for suspending military operations. And again, I just cannot stress enough that is very different. Military operations that's a wide umbrella, big umbrella, covers a lot of different types of operations. Many, many, many military operations are not warfare. There are other types of operations. It would have been totally outside of the purview of the court to order the Israelis to cease all military operations. That includes a lot of things. That would have been way outside of the jurisdiction of the ICJ, in my opinion. It would have been totally uncalled for. It would have been a wrong decision in actuality, because Israel absolutely should have the right to have a military operation to rescue their hostages. and to capture the leaders of Hamas who were responsible for October 7th. They have every right to do that. They have every right to go after the people who should be held responsible for October 7th. They have the right to do that. And it would have been totally outside of what's even fair, just, and right for the ICJ to say you can't do that. So this was the correct ruling, and it is not antithetical to a ceasefire. In fact, it pretty much supports it. They said don't kill any more members of the group and don't cause any more seriously bodily harm or mental harm. The only way you can do that is a ceasefire. You can do all these other things, rescue your hostages, hold Hamas accountable. You can't go after all the people. You can't be conducting all this warfare. So this was a huge, huge win for South Africa. Really not, who cares about South Africa? Honestly, this is a huge win for the Palestinian people, a huge win for the Gazans. This report says stop killing them, stop harming them, stop displacing them, stop blowing up all their stuff. You have to stop.